All right, welcome back everyone to the Athlete's Mind podcast. Back with another MMA podcast interview. There's a lot of MMA fans here on the channel. We're kind of continuing the theme because we've just come off interviewing Moses Deng, a Perth MMA fighter. So, what a great interview this one is. Colby Thicknesse, a UFC fighter here on the channel. The only other UFC fight I think we've had on here is Quillan Southfield, so I'm always super excited for these. A lot of you guys know that I love my MMA here on the channel. So, Colby, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and thank you for having me on, brother. I appreciate it.
No worries, man. It is an absolute pleasure. Now, we start every interview the same with interviewing our athletes. We want to get a bit of a background, and although there might be some people that already know, how did you actually get into MMA? Did the journey start from a young age or a bit later on?
So I started freestyle wrestling when I was 6 years old with my twin brother. So we were both wrestling at a local PCYC every Tuesday and Thursday night. Whilst I was doing that, I was playing like most kids in Australia did, was a bit of NRL. So I pretty much did them two sports up until I was around, I think, 12 or 13. And then I still had a bit of love for football, but realistically, I was just too small. Like, I'm a fully grown adult. I fight at 61 kilos. Like, I can't be playing football. Like, I'm just too small for the sport. And then so I was continuing to wrestling, but the wrestling scene's so small in Australia. So I thought the MMA stuff looked pretty fun. So I switched over to freestyle MMA when I was 13 under Joe Lopez. And I was too young to obviously do any sort of striking competitions or anything like that yet. So I went straight into the jiu-jitsu pretty heavily. Did the jiu-jitsu up until I was about 17, I think. Then I switched over to more of an MMA-based training. Had my first amateur fight when I was 18, still in high school. Went 8-1 as an amateur, turned pro. Had a pretty slow start to my pro career, but then in the last 11 months, racked up 5 fights, including a UFC debut. So it's been a very long process to get onto the Sydney card, but I was very happy that I finally got my opportunity.
I'm really interested to know because a lot of the fighters that we interview on here, I always like to ask them, was there like a particular point in your career coming up to the pro ranks where you kind of knew like, hey, I can actually take this somewhere? Or was that always the plan from the get-go? You knew, I really want to take this to the top level? Or were you kind of just testing the waters as you went along?
I honestly think since I was probably like 6 or 7 years old, I always wanted to be a professional athlete because, like most kids who go into a very athletic say pursuit as a professional career, it's normally because we aren't too attentive in school. And I was exactly like that. Like, I could sit down and do it, but I didn't enjoy it. And the last thing I wanted to do was be stuck in sort of like an office for a 9 to 5 of that. So I thought I really enjoy sports. I enjoy competing and sort of testing myself and getting better in different aspects of my life. So since a young age, I was always very aware that I wanted to be a professional athlete and make that my career. Obviously, when I was wrestling, the dream was to be a wrestler, but obviously there was no real future in it for Australia. So then when I switched over to the jiu-jitsu, I thought, I might be a jiu-jitsu athlete. But then I went to MMA and I was like, I think MMA fighting is actually where I want to be. And so I think since I was a very young kid, I've always been very goal-driven, very set that I want to do whatever I love in my life and I want to make that my work.
I love that, man. Yeah, I guess like you obviously made the right decision because, MMA has just grown so much, especially in Australia over the past few years. So it really is awesome to see where Australia is heading and also where the sport is heading. So that's really good. Now, I did want to obviously talk about your UFC debut. Now, you did fight Alexandra Topuria on UFC 312 as a replacement for Cody Haddon. Now, you obviously have been like speaking about this a lot on previous interviews, but what was your reaction when you got the call up to the UFC on short notice?
Oh man, I was so stoked when it happened. So I actually had a pretty average sparring session that morning, sort of thing. So I was like, as anybody does a combat sport, some days you go in, you're in the zone, you feel like you're a top dog around. Other days, nothing clicks. You just have to go through the motions. And it was one of them sparring days. So I finished that day. I had to go work 10 hours in my car doing a security shift. Had some Uber Eats in the car because I was bored. And I was like, well, I've got no fight news or anything coming up. So I might as well just treat myself a bit. And then around like 8, 9 o'clock at night, I got this Instagram DM from Ilya and Alexandre's manager. He asked me for my WhatsApp and I was like, all right, we'll see what happens here. Once he messaged me and I stalked his profile, I sort of got the gist. I was like, I wonder if this is going to be what I think it is. And then he rung me spoke for about 5 minutes, told me what happened with Cody. Then I rung Joe and Volk. They were over in New Zealand at the time, actually. And this was around 9:30, 10 o'clock. We were corresponding back and forth. Volk messaged Sean Shelby straight away. And then I went home, jumped in the sauna because I had a bit of weight to lose. And then wake up the next morning, check my weight, and I was like, all right, I definitely can make it from here. And then, yeah, after I checked my weight, I pretty much got a message from Joe 5 minutes later and say, it's a done deal. Contract should get sent through later on in the week.
That's pretty crazy. Like, does it? I'm interested to know. Like, does it feel kind of crazy that if you hadn't checked your like Instagram DMs, that like you potentially could have missed that opportunity?
Oh, bro, it's so crazy because like realistically, like I'm active on my phone, but I'm not like I'd have a pretty low screen time and that. Like I don't just sit and do it. It was more like it was almost a good thing I was working because it just gave me that time where I'm like, oh, I'm just playing on my phone anyway, so
Yeah.
I don't have notifications or anything. So I had to actually go into my message request, and I was just lucky because he started to follow me, and I was like, I thought nothing of it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I'll go through my DMs, and I'm like, oh, he's actually DM'd me about something. So who knows? I might have been out doing something else, and I might not have seen that till the morning. They might have given that opportunity to someone else. So it's very crazy. There's been a lot of circumstances in my life where everything happens for like a reason, I believe. And there's just circumstances which I don't think, like, who knows? I might have had a great sparring day and I might have just done something else and not worried about it. So it's just
Yeah.
crazy how everything led to this one moment.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. But when you really think about it, yeah, everything happens for a reason. Now, obviously, being Ilya's brother, Alexandra Topuria, that you fought, there was so much hype surrounding this fight, and everyone was talking about it simply, because of the name. And I'm not discrediting him in any way as a fighter, but let's be real, that name, there's obviously going to be hype around it no matter what. Did that kind of add like some pressure to you going into the fight, or did you not really think about any of that?
To be honest, this is probably the first fight in my like 17 fights where I felt the least amount of pressure. I think purely because I've always seen myself and carried myself as a UFC fighter, and
Mm.
that's been my goal since I've ever had my first fight, stepped into the gym. I always wanted this to be my career. So it's almost felt like, all right, I'm here. I've finally actually got the job. I'm here. This is where I'm set, and this is
Yeah.
where my actual career started. Whereas when I was on the regional scene, it was a lot more pressure because one setback on the regional scenes means it might take me another 12, 18 months to get there.
Mm.
And anybody who knows fighting knows, especially in a regional scene, there's no money in it whatsoever. So if
Yeah.
I have one or two setbacks, I might have to really reevaluate what I'm doing because it might not be financially viable for me to chase that dream anymore. So once I got in there, there was a real big burden sort of taken off my shoulders. Like, all right, I'm here. I don't need to stress about anything. I can just go out and fight. Even with simple things like I've lost this fight, the first one, but I don't have to necessarily stress and worry about when the next one is. Whereas on the regional scene, like my last 11 months trying to find fights, we've probably sent out 60 or 70 offers to people trying to fight,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
so many just no's and excuses and that. So that sort of stuff was, I think, really playing into the pressure of a fight. Like, oh, I've had 10 people say no, I've finally got this fight, I have to make the most of it, or it's a massive setback sort of thing. But now I'm
Mm.
in there. That's why I think the whole week I felt very little pressure, very little. I felt very little towards Alexandre. Obviously, the narrative and everything was really cool. Got to have like Taporia versus Volk 2.0 in
Yeah.
Australia and Sydney in my hometown. So it was great for like the storyline and the fans. Actually on myself, I can like honestly, truthfully say like I didn't feel any pressure, any nerves or anything like that. It honestly felt like it just gave me an opportunity to be very free inside of a cage.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's actually really cool to hear. Like, yeah, I guess, you've always felt like that's where you belong, and then once you've made it there, it's like not much has changed in a mentality perspective because you've always believed that that's where you belong. So that's actually, yeah, some really cool insight. How crazy was those 2 weeks of social media attention though? Like, obviously, I can imagine you would have had a lot of DMs from some opposing fans and all of that. Like, how was it dealing with that social media?
Bro, it was pretty chaotic, but I think the whole thing, like, as that was happening, like, I was in the Saturday I got told about the fight. That Friday of the next week, I got keys to my new place, which I was moving out from. So I was in the middle of like sorting out my move, moving houses, into moving with my girlfriend. So like
Yeah.
everything was happening. So it was almost good because I had this distraction of moving and that where I wasn't able to be on my phone too much. Then by the time I moved in, I was up in Sydney already at the Fighters Hotel. And then anybody knows of Fight Week, there's lots of media. So it
Mm.
was very, there was a lot there, but I couldn't honestly give too much attention to it because there's just too many other factors going into my life. Like even just with the training and cutting weight. So like there's so many other things going on. It was cool, but I was pretty much posting and ghosting and just trying to get as much attention on myself as possible.
Man, what a crazy week! Like moving in and all that. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot.
yeah, no, no, that's good. Now, walking out on the day to the cage, to an Aussie card in Sydney, your home crowd. Was that everything you had envisioned for your debut? Like so many UFC fighters here in Australia or just anywhere, dream of walking out to a home crowd. What was that feeling like?
If I'm being honest, it was so much better than what I dreamed it would be, purely because of the fact, like I thought my shot would have came on the contender series,
Mm.
so I would have fought on the Apex in front of a couple hundred people. Then I thought realistically, my first couple of fights would probably be at the Apex as well, because
Mm.
they don't normally let guys coming off Apex contender series fights to go straight into a pay-per-view slot. So in my head, I envisioned I'd be fighting middle of the year in contender. Then towards the end of the year, I'd just be back fighting the Apex. So I've had it visioned, but it was more just me, Joe, Volk, and Craig walking out like the four of us, like a pretty quiet Apex thing, which is cool anyway, because I did Ultimate Fighter when I was over
Mm.
with Volk. So I've seen how that all operates. I've been backstage to help the boys warm up. I've been in the court and everything like that. So I know how the whole Apex system runs. So I was very familiar with it. But to then actually sort of have the UFC debut in Sydney, an hour away from my house, was incredible. And I don't think it really hit me until I did the ceremonial Wayne face off with Volk. When even as I was just waiting there, as they're calling me, like just the pop and the crowd, and it was just so incredible. So it was so much better than anything I could have envisioned.
Yeah. Are you the type of fighter? I'm guessing the answer would be yes, but that kind of like fights better with a bigger crowd because I know when I interviewed Quillen on here, he was talking about when he went on the Contender Series that he found it a bit weird, like not having that crowd that he's used to, and it being really quiet in there. You can hear like all the punches from the crowd perspective. Like, are you the type of fighter that prefers to have like a really large crowd?
Oh, definitely. I really do believe like for it's funny when there's the least amount of pressure on me, say fight I'm meant to win or very low crowd and everything like that, it's when I almost feel like I have the most pressure on myself.
Mm.
But as soon as there's so much going on, there's like so many people in a stadium, so many people at home, you're fighting a great opponent, you're a massive underdog. It seems like all that pressure actually sounds in a weird way makes me feel no pressure. So in that
Mm.
sense, definitely, like I hope that for all my fights, it can be at massive stadiums, big crowds, big odds against me, and everything like that. Because I really do believe I thrive best under them circumstances.
Yeah, awesome. Now, obviously, in my opinion, and a lot of people would agree with me, you held your own in that fight. And at the end of the day, you fulfilled a dream making a UFC debut. And although you didn't get the win, what are your thoughts reflecting on your overall performance of that fight?
I think due to the circumstances, I did all things considered fairly well. Like I held myself to good, especially if people, which most people have who watched that fight, they've seen my previous fights. Like my striking's always been sort of everybody's always questioned my striking's like how's he gonna do if he fights a big knockout puncher, a guy who can sort of stuff his takedowns and keep on the feet and that. Which fair play, I got my takedown stuff, but I never felt besides getting clipped in that first round. Besides that, I felt very even when I got clipped, I still felt comfortable on the feet, and I didn't feel like at any point like, oh, I'm getting greatly outclassed here or anything like that. And I think it even reflects in how the fight looked on the feet as well.
For sure.
Obviously, he looked good because he was pressuring that, but there's a lot of good things I was doing from outside with my kicks, my switching stances, and everything like that. And then for the actual fight itself, I never. It's not a fight where I look back, I'm like, fuck, I just got beat up for 15 minutes. It was more. This minute was even. I did this wrong. He capitalized on this, and that gave him the next minute and a half. And it was
Mm.
just too many of them little things where I just made a couple to, which also he forced me to make them errors, but I made them errors. He capitalized, and he just won for like 30 seconds and minutes there. And if you lose, like realistically, you lose 2.5 to 3 minutes just off control time or something, you've lost that round. You do that in 3 rounds, you lost a fight.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, it was good that it was a 15-minute loss because there's so many little intricacies I can take out from each key point. I know what I did wrong and what cost me that moment. So now it's just about preventing the moments from happening in the future, which is done obviously during your preparation and training.
Yeah, definitely. It's all learning, man. Like I'm really glad to hear that's how you speak about a loss because some fighters don't really handle loss as well, but that's good because learning from it is obviously the best thing that you can do. Now, something interesting I did kind of want to ask you that steers a bit away from your UFC debut is you actually have faced a few injuries throughout your career. And the reason I bring that up is because here on the podcast, it's quite a big topic we like to talk about. And I'm interested to know, was there any point that, these injuries kind of took a bit of a mental toll on you with being like not able to train and going through a bit of rehab? Like, and if so, how have you kind of dealt with that?
So there definitely has been because what's the best way to put it? There was the worst one I had was definitely the concussions. So
Mm,
what happened with that is in the sense it wasn't the worst injury. Like I can go through the list probably quicker that way. So I've had like bad knee injuries where I tore a lot of things. The one that sounds the worst is actually probably a broken back because I had
mm,
fractures there. That one physically was bad, but mentally it wasn't too bad. But the worst one was when I had a series of concussions. And what happened with the concussions is that because I had so many back to back, it actually altered my brain chemistry. So what happened was the same my set level of happiness is here, it
yeah.
put me down to here. But because I wasn't
Right.
aware of that, I actually thought like I was like, oh, like there's something wrong with me. I have depression or that.
Mm,
And then when you're not sure, because this was before I spoke to the correct people and that, I'm like, oh, like you'd get angry at yourself because you wake up and you're in like a foul mood, and then you're getting cut because you're like, oh, why am I in a foul mood? Like I just have to take 3 months off training. It's not like it's the end of the world, and you can get caught in pretty like negative feedback loops like that. But
yeah.
then I was fortunate enough where I spoke to good people in the sense I went up and saw concussion specialists and that, and they spoke me through that process. Like, no, due to repeated brain injuries, it is quite common. You're going to feel like you're in a fog. You're going to have irritability. You're going to feel like you're in a very low mood. You won't get the safe you do is something it normally gives you an 8 out of 10 happiness. It's very normal. You might only get up to a 5 in that. And once I got that news, it's sort of, oh, okay, there's nothing actually wrong with me. It's just purely because of the injury to my head.
Mm,
But before knowing that, there was a couple week period there, which was sort of pretty rough. But when I say pretty rough, it wasn't a lot. I was like too bad or anything like that. It was just more. I was just more within myself, and it was more just having to like really help around me from like my friends, my family, teammates, and stuff like that. And just like, oh, I'm not feeling the best. I think it could be this concussion, but I'm not sure. And then just doing
mm.
little things to sort of bring you back from that sort of point. So it might sound verbally worse than what it is, but that's definitely the worst thing I felt, but it's purely because of the injuries. And it's like anything, if you don't know what's causing it, and that's what causes the most sort of anxiety and worry about it. But once I spoke to the right people and got all the information about it, was pretty fast back. Plus doing all of the like, what was it? Like motor neuron training and stuff like that. Have this stuff doing for your eyes and sort of brain and stuff like that to help you bring to back to a baseline. So after I saw the dude, I was back to the baseline in like a week or two, but it was
Mm.
more that in between waiting period where I was like, oh, this is pretty sort of scary. I wonder what's going on.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Like, I think, we're always learning more and more about these concussions in sport and how they affect the brain. Like that, I find that really interesting how,
Mhm.
yeah, it actually affected your mood and, you
Mhm.
know, what you did to kind of like recover from that. Yeah, that's good that you chose to speak to people about it. That's definitely a big thing that a lot of athletes share the same perspective as you here that I've interviewed. Now, going on to a bit of like your workout routine, this is also something that I'm quite curious to know. What does like a usual week of training look like for you when you're not in camp? Because, you know, uh, MMA training is obviously, I believe, the most intense that you can do in a sport. It truly is a lifestyle between your
Mhm.
eating, your strength training, your cardio, and endurance, everything like that. So, what does an average week look like for you?
So an average week in camp versus out of camp is honestly almost identical. The only difference is on the Wednesdays and Friday mornings. we'll just do a fight simulator. So that's the only different thing. Besides
Okay.
that, all the sparring and everything stays the same. So good example is say Volk's in camp now. So so say my current week is like so currently now I'm helping run the Ultra program. So I'm at the gym at say 6 a.m. to teach a class 6 till 7. I then go into a Wollongong to do my strength and conditioning lifting, which I do every Monday and Wednesday. So that is around 7:30, 8:30. I go back to the gym. I'll train 9:30 to 10:30. Go home, relax. Then I'm back at the gym for 3 o'clock to do some pro sparring.
Yep.
Shower, teach the kids for an hour. Then I still got another 2 hours on top. So that's pretty much like it's like an average Monday. But say Tuesdays are more like striking in the morning, 2 hours grappling at night. So from anywhere it can range from like 3 to almost sometimes 6 hours a day of training sort of thing.
Mm.
And that's Monday to Saturday. Sundays are a rest day, but normally Sundays I just load up a bunch of PTs in the morning just to help get some extra income in.
Yeah, nice. Now you did bring up Volk. Now I did actually want to ask you about that.
Mhm.
Alex Volkanovski has been a massive supporter in your corner, and you two are obviously very close. How is that having an all-time great of the sport being able to back you and really helping you throughout your MMA journey?
Oh, bro, it's so incredible. Like, I can't put into words how much he has done for me, like, in a sense that he's helped me out, but how much he's just done for me, even mentally, like, helping me out with all these setbacks in my careers and everything like that. So it's honestly like a big brother sort of thing, how I see this relationship between us sort of thing. So then, even with the UFC thing, him being having that connection to message Sean, so that helps. And then seeing him go from a 3-1 pro to world champion, pound for pound number one. And so it's just there's so many different things that I've got to see him do that helps me in my career, even with all the fight week media stuff, because I've been there, I've seen it all go through. I know basically what questions they're gonna ask you. I know how everything plays out. I know what like a weighing ceremony, I know what a fight night looks like. I know all of this stuff from him. So having someone like him in my corner has been incredible. And I'm just very excited because he's back in camp now. He's about 5 weeks out. And this is a Volk I've been telling people. It looks like he's got the exact same energy as he did for that Volk Islam first fight, which obviously he lost. But I think that was the most dangerous Alex. And I think arguably he could have won that fight. But I think if you put him against anybody else on the planet other than Islam Makhachev, he would have ran through them. I think Islam is just that good. He was able to keep up. And he's got that exact same sort of intensity, training, and even just the mindset's very different to what I think he's had almost in his couple of previous fights, where he's really just want to get this one back and get his belt back. So he's looking so sharp, bro. Like he did when was it? Was it last Wednesday? He did his fight simulator, and I was next to Jamie Larkey, and it was like 3 rounds in deep, and I was like, fuck, bro, he looks so sharp at the moment. He still has like another 5 weeks of camp to go. So I'm honestly, even just talking, I get so G'd up because I just can't wait to see what he's going to do come Miami.
That is so good to hear, man. Like I'm very glad. I'm so excited, and that goes for everyone else, every other Australian MMA fan. So excited for that fight, and yeah, man. Like I think I agree with you that Islam fight. He looked incredible, but as you said, Islam is, he is a great fighter. So
Mhm.
yeah, I do agree. He would have beaten anyone else that would have been put in front of him that day. But yeah, super excited for his upcoming fight, and he's going to remind everyone that he is the champ. So very, very
Yeah.
exciting. Now, just a couple more questions for you, Colby, and we'll let you go. If you could have any advice for some younger fighters, kind of coming through the amateur ranks that want to
Mhm.
make it to a high level in whether that's the regional scene or make it to the top level in the UFC, what would your advice be for them?
First bit of advice is always get a good team around you. So good dietitian, good S&C coach, good physio, and good everything like that. But the best bit of personal advice I could give somebody is carry yourself as the person you want to be in, say, the 10 years into your career. So I always want to act and I want to carry myself like a UFC champion, even though I'm not a UFC champion. Because
Mm.
you're never going to get there unless you adopt the behaviors, the training pattern, the routines to get you there. If you think you can just sort of be comfortable with yourself and what you're doing, it's going to get you there. It's not. You have to really shift yourself and not worry about how you're feeling today. You've got to be willing to put in for hard work. And how I do that is look at myself and I'm like, what would the very best version of myself be? What would the 135 champion world Colby Thicknesse be doing right now? And it's just constantly trying to do them things. And then eventually over time, you're slowly going to grow and become that person because it's never going to happen overnight. You're going to have slip up, but it's always just get back on track. And I always just believe you have to behave how you want to see yourself as the best possible version and you can get there instead of just hoping you're going to become that person.
That is great advice, Colby. Now, just one last one for you. What is next in your UFC MMA journey? You know, there's a bit of talk, and you've just obviously come off your debut. What can you tell us with next in your journey?
So originally we thought might have tried to push for Miami, but after some talks and that I had 5 fights in 11 months. If I went to that Miami, it would have been 6 fights in 13 months, which is pretty crazy for a pro fighter sort of thing. And then so I think now I'm in a very good position. So I think we're going to look around the middle of a year mark, so around that May June mark. And honestly, I do prefer it this way because, as I said, Volk's in camp. We've got Craig Jones, Brad Riddell, Frank Hickman all coming over next Tuesday. So for me, not being in camp and having to almost be that Diego Lopez training partner, it means I get to mimic his style, pick up all the best things he does, give that look to Volk, train with all these elite level guys, and then implement that into my style. Whereas if I was in fight camp, I'd be too worried about what I have to do. So Craig might be showing all this cool stuff from the bottom for sweeps, and that Brad might be showing these cool striking techniques. But when I'm in camp, I'm going to have to be too focused on what I need to do for my fight. So pretty much I think after Volks does his camp, we'll have a sort of talk and that and try and get something in the works in the middle of the year.
Awesome to hear. Now, thank you so much for joining us today, Colby. I really appreciate it. It's always awesome to interview a UFC fighter. So, yeah, thank you so much. I wish you the best for your future. And, yeah, we'll all be watching here on the channel. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I appreciate it, brother. You're a legend.
Oh, all good. Now, everyone watching this will be on our main platform, YouTube, and all podcast platforms to listen to on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, every single podcast platform. Make sure you follow us on the socials. We have more MMA content on the way, so you do not want to miss it. And I'll catch you guys in the next episode of The Athlete's Mind. Thank you.